Okay, good morning, students. Today we're going to discuss about introduction to accounting. So, this discussion will be discussed by our beloved Dr. Victoria Reliano. So, I hope guys you enjoy listening to our discussion, and we hope too that after this discussion you will learn about you will learn something about introduction to accounting. Now, let's go with Dr. Eliano. Ma'am, take it away po, ma'am.
Okay,
Your turn.
thank you, Professor Marlon Andrada, for your introduction. I'd like to welcome each and every one of our students enrolled in this Accounting 6100, which is more of the introduction to accounting. So, dear students, hopefully you can be aware of these contents because these are all very important aspects of accounting. Okay, so to start with, just a pleasant Monday morning to everyone, and God bless us all. Introduction to accounting. So, as we have normally, the very definition of what is this accounting. As I've given plenty of times, when you say accounting, we are referring to that. Say, for example, it is to be considered as a science, recording, classifying, summarizing in a significant manner and in terms of money transaction and events, which are in part at least of financial character and interpreting the results thereof. It is also considered, there are plenty of definitions which is ought to mean by this very word accounting. For all you know, my dear students, accounting is as old as what? Money. During the time, Babylonia's time, 25th years, a century ago, 20th century ago, there is already the very term of to be said as accounting. Okay? And this is all about the science of how we can record the transactions, which are very, very important in the aspect of having the financial information, which is very, very much necessary and needed by any business establishment. So my dear students, this is also considered as a language of business. Why do you consider it as a language of business? Because as the very term language, it can communicate. It can say something about the financial position, the financial condition, what is the result of business operations, of a certain business organization. Okay? That's why no one can deny that accounting is very, very important in any setup of business establishment, whether it is a single proprietorship, whether it is a partnership, a corporation, regardless of whatever type or form of business establishment we're dealing with, you need to have our very term accounting. So that is signifying, my dear students, that you need to have a focus, attention to our very subject because this is quite significant, so relevant to be knowledgeable of these things in the operation of a certain business. Okay? So, it goes with, Sir Marlon, regarding this accounting, napakarami natin pwedeng malaman. Meaning, you can be very, very interested to know it, especially when we have the very functions. Ano ba ang mga functions? Ano ba yung mahahalagang aspeto ng accounting? Definitely, it can say something about the financial position of a business. It can help, it can be a help to protect the business assets. It can say something about the results of whatever business establishment is it. And it can be of help also to design the very, what do you call that? These are the very format designing of these statements, of these reports, which will be very, very much needed by our what? Legal requirements, for example, to be submitted to the BIR, to be submitted for, say, you are having some sort of, that is mandatory, auditing for auditing purposes, take note. So whatever is needed from an operation of a certain entity, business firms, or business organizations, accounting is always part and parcel of the operation. Okay? So next slide, sir.
Ma'am,
So
I'm sorry
coming
po.
up to this
Ma'am,
accounting. So when we are talking of accounting, my dear students, this is involving the very what? The very functions which I have mentioned, and also come up with the different financial statements, financial reports. The very basic financial reports that we are referring to are, of course, your balance sheet, your income statement, your statement of cash flow, and of course, your statement of owner's equity. Owner's equity, if it is referring to a single proprietorship. Statement of partner's equity, if you are having it from a partnership. And statement of what? Stockholders' equity, if it is referring to, or if we are preparing one for a corporation. So, by the way, those are the very important aspect. And when you say that it is an art of recording, recording, classifying, summarizing, and interpreting the results thereof, they are the very four main functions of accounting. Summarizing, or rather, number one, recording. So, having the accounting cycle, because we will go ahead, all accounting subjects, especially when you are on the very first part, you ought to understand the very functions of it and the very accounting cycle, the complete accounting cycle. Okay? So when you say recording, this is actually analyzing the transactions and events that took place in a certain business operation. And then to record means to have your debit and credit rule. You have to apply it, meaning you know for one what is A, what is L, and what is C. Assets, liabilities, and capital, as well as your income and expenses. Income is less for revenue, and expenses, precisely everybody can relate. When we are talking of expenses, dear students, dear accounting students, you have your operating expenses, administrative expenses, selling expenses, miscellaneous expenses, plenty, isn't. And then we have also your liabilities, which are considered as assets. A for assets. This is referring to anything of value, property, owned by the business. Lahat ng pag-aari na isang business organization is to be considered as an asset, which is, again, will have economic benefits for the operation of that business. And when we are talking of liabilities, these are what? These are referring now to obligations, payables incurred by a certain business firm in the process of business operation. And then come up with C, which is part and parcel also of your balance sheet. When you come up with C, this is referring to capital, owner's equity. Okay, as I have said earlier, different stockholders equity, partners equity, and proprietorship. Okay, so those are all pertaining to your balance sheet. And we are talking of income statement, that is more of income and expenses. Right? So recording, that is the very first step in the accounting cycle. In the process of performing your accounting task, number one is, of course, your recording, to record all the business transactions chronologically. It should be in the proper order, sequencing of the transactions that took place in a certain business organization. Can I be understood by my dear students? Okay, so when you are talking of recording, which is the first step in the cycle, iteratedly been given, this will be to the books of what? Original entry. We call it journal. And when we are talking of transferring it, that is classifying now. you need to classify from the recording, from the journal entries, or from the books of original entry, we call it journal. You need now to classify. Okay? So, classifying is part of your posting na. You need to transfer all the journal entries from the books of original entry, rather, to the books of final entry, which we have to term or call this as general ledger. Okay, so that is the number two, posting to the general ledger coming from the general journal. Okay, so you need to classify. Is it an asset account? Place it on the asset account title. Okay, is it an accounts receivable? Place it on your ledger. Groupings. You have to classify all the accounts being entered in the books of original entry. We call it journal. Okay, and then after the process of recording, classifying, na i-record mo na, then na-classify mo na to the general ledger, then this is now the so-called summarizing. You have to summarize it all in a significant manner in terms of money. Isn't it? Because we cannot record or we cannot journalize all these transactions without having an equivalent, cash equivalent. That's why we have to consider in a significant manner and in terms of money. So if we are dealing, definitely we are here in the Philippines, that will be Philippine currency. Now, if you are in some other places abroad, that will be the existing current what monetary values that they are having the time that you are making the accounting process. Okay, and then which are important lists of financial character and interpreting the results thereof. Why? Because after recording, after your posting to the general ledger, you need to summarize it in a trial balance, this so-called unadjusted trial balance, wherein you can now have to come up with the preparation of the worksheet. After the adjustments, you need to prepare the adjusted, this time, adjusted trial balance and come up with the next columns, which is the preparation of your IS and BS. IS for income statement, BS for your balance sheet. Isn't it? So you can now have come up with this next step, which is summarizing, interpreting the results thereof. So what do you mean by interpreting? You can now have an interpretation of what took place during a certain period of time. During a particular accounting period, you can say what happened, what is the result of the business operation. So you can interpret, is it generating income or incurring losses on the part of our business owners or investors? Okay, so that is the very four basic function. You have to summarize, rather, number one, record. Number two, classifying. Number three, you have to summarize. When you are coming up or preparing this FS, you have the summarization of what had been recorded, what had been classified, and then after summarizing, you can now make a proper interpretation of what had been the result. Is it a profit or loss for the business? Okay, so this is the very main concept of our basic accounting knowledge. And from there, isn't it, we have also to distinguish the so-called bookkeeping from our accounting term. As I've said, counting during those years, it should, it can be classified as a when you have this bookkeeping, it's more of the theoretical facts, and then when you have this uh, accounting, this is more of applied application. Okay? The actual things that is happening, actual things happening rather in a certain business operation. Okay, so that's it for your accounting and bookkeeping. Now we are talking of accounting. To differentiate it from bookkeeping, it is a more complex one, more concrete, more detailed, more complete comparing it to our, say, kumbaga, yung ating bookkeeping is part and parcel of the accounting process. Okay? So that's it for your accounting and bookkeeping terms, terminologies as part of it. Okay? So coming up with this introduction, you won't ever forget the very historical background of accounting. Kailan ito nagsimula, as I said, as old as cash, as old as money. And of course, the father of accounting who is, what? Si Luca Pacioli, he said it, from Italy. Ayan, dyan pa yan. Siya yung father of accounting, to be considered as father of accounting, which can be read if you are having some other reading materials written by books, written by different authors, whether they are local, foreign authors. Those are all been indicated and well mentioned in the history of our accounting.